Now that we have created a GitHub repository and associated it with our local repository, and then of course pushed our changes up, it's time to continue working. So back on our GitHub repository, if we go down a bit, GitHub really likes having README files in repositories. So let's go ahead and oblige it. Click on the Add a README button. It will create a readme.md file, and then it will automatically set this up based on the name of the repo and the description we gave it earlier. Let's start with this initially. So I scroll down to the very bottom of the page, and it gives us commit options. Now on GitHub, we really don't have a way of staging changes, so effectively we just go straight for the commit. The gray text that's here will be the commit message if we don't choose to add our own commit message here. And this last little bit is optional. If you don't type anything here, it just won't be used. All right, I'm okay with this commit message, so there's no point in typing that in. Click on Commit New File. Great, now we have a readme.md file. The .md is simply a Markdown file. It's just a text file that gets rendered by GitHub that has special markings that denote like headers and bold and italics and stuff. It's a very simplistic text format. Great, now let's head back over to our terminal. Let me clean up a bit here. Let's do a git status. We know we made a change on our remote repository that isn't reflected on our local repository. If we do git status, it tells us we're on the master branch, which we knew, and that we're up to date with origin master. Now, it's great that it's tracking origin master, but its information is actually out of date. I do an ls, we don't have a README file. So we're really not up to date, which I know the README file is on the GitHub repo. Well, we need to fix this. One way we can do that is to use the fetch command. Git fetch, and I could specify origin master, but I don't need to. Early on, we set up the default push to be simple, which just means that it will assume the tracking branch that you're currently on so that we don't have to specify it. So if we use git fetch, it will assume you mean origin and that we also mean master, since that's the branch we're on. I've downloaded all the changes, but I haven't integrated those changes yet. If I do an ls, we still don't have the README file in our master branch yet, or in the working directory. However, now we can do a git status and have the correct results come to us. Now it says, of course, we're on the master branch, and that our branch is behind origin master by one commit. That's true. It tells us this can be fast forwarded, which I'm not really going to cover, but that's a good thing. And that we need to use git pull to update the local branch, which is what we're going to do next. So let's do that. Git pull. Again, I don't have to specify origin master. It's assumed at this point. Now we updated and we did the fast forward, so that's key. It told us we could do a fast forward, and indeed we were able to do a fast forward. So now we have downloaded and integrated our changes from GitHub. We had one file changed with 2 insertions. Basically the 2 lines that are part of the README file. So that's what I recommend doing. It doesn't hurt to do git fetch, so you can do a git fetch now. It's completely harmless. But git pull changes the state of your repository locally, since it'll add any commits that happened on the remote side to your local repository. So fetch has no negative side effects, but a git pull could integrate those changes from your remote repository. So I like to do a git fetch first to see what I'm up against, and then do a git pull. I like to do that sequence before I begin doing any work on my local repository, just in case I have team members that made changes while I was away or from the last time I started working again. All right, let's continue working. And this time I want to update the README file. Let's use Atom. And we're going to open the Readme file. So you can see that we have the Readme file here locally, in addition to the other 3 files. So now we have 4 files total on our local system. I want to update this. Instead of local demo, I want to provide something more meaningful. Local demo repo. And then here I'll say, but now also on GitHub. Once that's done, let's go ahead and save our change. And we can exit out of Atom. Git status. We're on the master branch. We're up to date. And of course, we detect our modification. We can use our express commit that we learned about earlier. Git commit -am, so it's an existing file. Now, the express commit doesn't work with new files. It only works with existing files. Updating Readme. We have our commit. Git show master. You see our change here. And since this was a really short one, I didn't have to exit out. Now let's do git status. So we just committed, but we haven't pushed any changes up yet. So we're on master branch, and that our branch is ahead of origin master by 1 commit. So now we have a commit locally that doesn't exist on our remote side, which we can confirm by going to that particular file that we know we modified. If I refresh here, I have 2 commits. I have the original commit, and then I have the Readme commit that we did on GitHub. Now this is in reverse chronological order. So if I go back here, if I go into the Readme file, it's still the original content. So if I go to edit this file, you can see it's that original setup that we had before. So I'm going to get out of that. And let's hop back over to the terminal and let's finish this off. Like we've done before, we can do git push. And the examples we've had before, I use origin master. We could still do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't need to, since we already have a tracking branch, which I showed earlier with git remote show origin, which shows us all the details about this particular remote reference, which happens to be named origin. We have our master branch that's tracked. That means that we don't need to specify origin and master in our git push command. To git push, and that's it. Then press enter. Since it's been long enough, I need to re-enter my credentials. All right, now I've updated master, that's local side, to master, the remote side. Let's hop back over to our web browser and check that out. Back on our GitHub repository, let's reload the page. Now we have the last commit, which was committed on our local side, updating Readme. And now we have some updated contents of our Readme file, which is actually rendered now on our main page of our GitHub repository. We can also see that contents by clicking into it. And we can either click on edit or raw. If we click on raw, you can see the contents of this file. Use your browser's back button to get back to this page. All right, so we're done with this example. So now I'm going to close our web browser, close out all the tabs, and now I'm going to exit out of our terminal. Now that we've demonstrated the continuation of working with our repository, that concludes the second part of the Get Started guide featuring Git and GitHub. Please join me in the comments. Give me a thumbs up if you would. And of course, check out my other courses on Udemy. See the links in the description below.